We don't typically have the fireplace in the background, but uh, Jeff Sheen from Grange Insurance posted on LinkedIn that fireside chats these days never have a fireplace. So I was like, I'm going to display one at the next Startup Grind, and it'll be weird because it'll be on a screen above our heads. But Rick was cool with it because you can see Rick is very normal. He's very straight-laced. He never stands out in a crowd. And so, I'm not surprised that you were okay with the fireplace over our heads.
It's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's great stuff. Thank you. Although someone just said I prefer palm trees, and
Well,
but that'd be something different.
yeah. So it's interesting that this sort of type of conversation became known as a fireside chat, because did they only happen in cabins, in the woods in the wintertime? I don't really even understand the sort of genesis of
Old clubs with Chesterfields and fireplaces. And
right.
Yeah.
Because lots of conversations happen in places that don't have a fireplace.
Right.
Yeah, that sort of stuck as the moniker and the label, right? So here we are.
Thank you.
Sitting below, a YouTube. It's actually a 10-hour Christmas YouTube video.
I won't talk that long, I promise.
It's odd to see you not. We were talking a little bit earlier. It's odd not to see you at Duamici or No Soliciting or another bar in town.
Does everybody need to know that? Or about the market?
Well, it says something about me too. That
Yeah,
whenever
you're
I
out
run
and
into
about.
you,
Yeah,
it's
I'm a downtown guy.
at a
so,
bar,
yeah,
right.
You'll see me downtown mostly.
Yeah, I was going to try to dress reasonably stylish, but then I thought, well, there's probably no point, and as you can see, there was no point. So I just went,
Stop.
gray T-shirt, because
Flattering me.
Rick always looks like this all the time whenever I see him. Is it a requirement as part of being the executive director of a public market?
I used to be in the
look cool?
fashion business, so I have a lot of stuff laying around.
So you pulled this out of the corner.
This
of
is
the
the
closet.
archives.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's got a cool bag. I mean, it's just too much.
I am too much. I think.
This is Rick Harrison Wolf from the North Market, by the way, the executive director. Please welcome him.
Thank you.
And so thanks to our team at AWH who helps us put this on. You would have met Alex when you checked in. Terry's here as well. Alex Brown is in the back. Alex is with Dickinson Wright. And I was thinking about this actually today because Alex emailed me earlier and said, hey, I'm going to be at Startup Grind tonight. And I was thinking about Alex, and he's long time supporter and sponsor and came to these things from the beginning. And I was thinking about him, and I thought my first thought outside of Alex being a really good attorney, and he's actually kind of funny and witty for being an attorney. And
that doesn't sound like a compliment.
no, there's a compliment. Because most aren't that funny, but he's kind of funny because we've had the opportunity to hang out at events on occasion, and he's actually kind of funny. So if you want a good attorney who's also reasonably funny, talk to Alex Brown from Dickinson Wright, and he can make you laugh, and he'll make sure that you stay out of trouble. So let's talk about the market. There's a whole host of things going on at the market. Some people may have seen some of the stories, and there's a whole host of things I'm sure going on for you as part of all of that stuff. And you were mentioning you came from a meeting with City Council member Brown.
Yes.
And
It was off the record, but I guess everybody knows that now.
right, everybody knows that now. But that's okay. I mean,
It's okay. No.
You didn't talk about
What's
anything
going on?
top secret, I'm assuming.
No. What's going on at the market? A lot is going on at the market. I guess before I go there, I like to do a little past, present, future, just so everybody sort of can understand the whole thing, how we got where we are today. Anybody know how many markets we used to have in Columbus at one time? We had 4. So there was Central Market, which is now where the Greyhound station is, torn down in the middle of the night in the 60s. That was the original. We were the second, 1876. There was the East Market, which was over on Mount Vernon, that burned down in 1948. And then there was the West Market, which was on Gift Street, which I believe is a Boys and Girls Club or something of that nature in Franklinton. Our building actually burned down in '48. I have the headline in my office, "City to Not Rebuild." But the merchants got together and purchased a Quonset hut, World War II Quonset hut. Does anybody remember the Quonset hut? Sat in our parking lot. So the first one burned down in '48. The Quonset hut was a temporary solution. It was there from 1948 to 1995. Not very temporary. In the late 80s or mid 80s, before Convention Center, before Arena, and by the way, I moved away. I grew up 3 to 18, right over here in Grandview, left in '88 to never come back. I came back about 7 years ago. The Quonset hut was still there when I was a kid. So I come back, the Quonset hut was about to fall down, and also the Convention Center was coming. So there was the threat that the last public market in Columbus was going to go away. The administration at the time, Greg Lashukka, still shops at the market, was a big fan, is a big fan. Him and a group turned it to a nonprofit. It was city-owned and city-run for all those years, up to the '80s. And the nonprofit and that administration in the city got together and say, let's preserve the last public market. $5 million, they bought the land. The building we're in now was owned by Nationwide. They just kept paper in there, I guess. It was originally a warehouse it was manufacturing for farm equipment, threshers back in the 1800s. So those are 1800s warehouses. The city bought that from Nationwide, did a $5 million capital campaign, city chipped in, and the market moved in there in '95. So it's our third location on the same spot, and we're the last remaining public market. Ohio is weird in a great way in that we have 3 public markets.
Good qualification.
Yeah, no,
Good qualification.
In the public market world, we have 3 in Ohio. West Side Market, Cleveland, which is city-owned, city-run. Finley, which is the same structure as us. It's a nonprofit. The city owns most of the property. And then us. Most states have none left. So it's relatively a difficult thing to find. In Europe, clearly, London, Barcelona have amazing market systems, but most of the ones in America went away with the advent of the supermarket and suburbs.
And is Pike in Seattle the most famous, and is that what most people think about in the U.S. as a public market?
Indeed. Pike is the biggest. I mean, they have hundreds of acres. I mean, there's housing, there's movie theaters, lots of retail. It's a similar structure to us, but there's a lot of state. I was just at a market conference in London and was hanging out with those folks. Theirs is a very much more complicated structure. But yes, that is the sort of the biggest of all. Reading Terminal, Pennsylvania, and then Philly's another very famous one. So there's not a lot left. And generally speaking, in America, the ones that are left are like us. They are nonprofits with a city partnership because public markets cannot operate without subsidies. Our mission, the biggest part of our mission is to incubate and support local and independent business, and at below market rate rents. So with that, you need other help, and for us, it's fundraising and city support.
So what do you talk about when public market people get together at a conference in London about public markets? What are the big issues? I'm assuming it's not competitive because you don't compete with even the market in Findlay, really, and certainly not with the West Side Market in Cleveland. So when you guys get together as an industry, what are you talking about?
I mean, we all have the same struggles. That's sort of the thing you learn when
so
you
just cry together?
We all cry together, actually, yes. They are the same struggles all over the world. At Queen Vic Market in Australia, it's the fresh merchants, which is really, there is some competition now, but it's really not with other markets, it's with food halls. I mean, that's sort of the new market, and it's different. That's generally speaking all prepared foods, and what I like to call a proper market still has the fresh element to it, which we have flowers, we have produce, we have fresh meat, fresh fish, cheese, and those things. So the struggle all over the world is maintaining those businesses because they can't compete with supermarkets. So it's really maintaining that balance of what's inside, because I don't decide really what's inside. You do when you come there, and if you don't buy produce, then the produce guy won't make it. And there's a lot of options out there these days. We talk about things like that. yeah, I mean, everybody sort of is in this, nobody has enough money, because like I said, these things, generally speaking, it's fundraising and subsidies to keep the mission alive. So, and that's the same thing around the world. You know, you go to these things and you come back saying, well, I'm smarter than I thought I was, or I'm a lot dumber than I thought I was, or you know, I think we're just maintaining the right way. So it's really being around all these people from all over the world, and we all share the same sort of success and struggles.
So you mentioned incubating small businesses and entrepreneurs and startups, maybe not in the traditional sense of how a place like this at Rev One might think of a startup in the technology space, and Hot Chicken Takeover is probably the poster child example of a company that has now begun to expand and grow and what Joe's done with it and the mission and all of that. So talk about that as part of the overall mission, why that's important, and where public markets sort of fit into that piece of the ecosystem, giving these entrepreneurs and these small businesses a chance to get a leg up.
So yeah, I mean, we have a lot of great examples, and some that people don't realize. Clearly, everybody knows about Jenny's. She started over in the corner there by the door. It was her second attempt at a business in the market. Her first one failed, actually, and then she came back with another business plan, and that was your first Jenny's. Joe's another example. Met through friends. He did his pop-up. That only worked in the summer. And we had a space upstairs that I thought would be perfect for him, but not everybody could pull off. Bubbles, if you know the juice and tea, he now has 8. He started in the market. The barbecue, Market and Boar, he now has 4. So there's a lot of stories. There's a couple people that seem to get the press, but we have a number of those in the market. Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is we have 1.5 million, 2 million people coming through the doors a year. We have a convention center across the street, which is probably about 50% of our business. With that amount of traffic, it's, and like I said, the low barrier to entry rent-wise is a great way and a great place to start. And we are food-centric. I mean, the market, in the old days, there was probably a blacksmith and somebody made quilts and so forth. We've become food-centric. So, I mean, in that space, I believe we do it better than anyone in Columbus. And that's through, I mean, if you apply for a business there, Cocoa Cat, relatively new, year-old chocolate place. You know, the woman and her husband, he still works for the city. She quit her job. This is her passion. She started doing his pop-ups. We have pop-ups under the Red Stairs, farmers markets, those things. And she decided after she made a great product and decided she wanted to quit her job and do this for a living. So put together a proper business plan, and she ended up being a permanent merchant. So they're a perfect example of really, she followed her dream, and she has a business in there now.
So how do you pick who gets inside of the 4 walls?
There's an application process which you can do online. I mean, I just said it's an overused word, but curating is really important to me. When I took over the job 6 years ago, of what I felt was missing. And the other part is that, we have businesses in there that have, the flower merchant, Marty, Market and Bloom, she's been there since the Kwanzaa Hut, probably close to 30 years. And you talk, well, if you incubate, then you move on. Well, she's developed a delivery business, she's developed an online business, so she's grown to be just more than that space. But to me, it's finding when a space opens, what do we need? What's happening in the world? We have a lot of applications, a fair amount. I think there's now 19 new merchants since I've started out of 35, and a fair amount of those, probably 2/3 of them, maybe somebody I saw around town doing something. Dos Hermanos, when that space opened, I said, we need, a Latino food truck. I want to give somebody their first brick and mortar. So we only interviewed food trucks, and Lisa Gutierrez got that space. So a fair amount of the time I have something in my head that I feel we need, or I see something around town. And the new ramen just opened a couple weekends ago. He was an application, that just a business plan that came through. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's from Tokyo. He went to Sushi Academy. Caught my attention. So it's still either me finding things around town or the application process. Those are really the 2 ways.
So these are mostly people that also hang out at bars.
Absolutely not.
I'm teasing
Yes,
you.
I-
So you now find yourself running a public market. So grand plan, stumbled into it by accident. Did you come back to Columbus to do this? How did you end up with me grabbing a mic talking about the North Market?
That's a whole. I won't give my memoir because it's complicated. I was in LA for a long, long time. Worked for a shoe company who I will not give press to here, and things ended in '09. I was vice president of Skechers. I was vice president of brand development and oversaw the non-Skechers brands that we had, licenses, in-house things, footwear and accessories. And it just in '09, like a lot of things, it ended. And I took a little time off because I needed to. I had to because I couldn't find a job immediately. Traveled around, and I came back to Columbus to visit friends. And the food truck thing was just starting to happen in Los Angeles. And for some reason, I said, you know what, I'm going to bring a food truck from LA to Columbus. And that's initially what brought me back. I still own my place in LA. It was really never supposed to be permanent. And I was one of the early food trucks here, and I hated it, most every minute of it. Creating the brand was the fun part. The working part was horrible. You have 365 days of good weather in LA where you can make money. You don't here. There's a lot of battles. It's a tough biz. But I'd never had my own business. I always sort of corporate life, so I wanted to try it. Then I decided I hated it, and I put it up for sale, and somebody bought the brand and the truck. And then I was going to leave again. I was going to go back to LA, or was looking at other options, and part of my shtick for the truck was most of the stuff that I sold came from the North Market. I got my spices from Ben the Spice Guy. I got my cheese from our former cheese fella, things of that nature. And somebody you know said, hey, that guy over at the North Market retired. And I said, all right, I'll throw my name in the hat, as I had done. You know, I'd been really sort of unemployed for a while again, and just threw my name in. 400 people applied. I didn't hear anything. I think I applied in January of 13. March, I get a phone call that says, we're down to the final 8, which I'd completely forgotten about it. So I was.
This was a job you really wanted.
Well, the thing is when you don't hear from, you don't get a call back in 2 months. It's like, all right, that has come and gone. It wasn't that. It was just, you're like, all right, because, you know, I had about 100 of those, no callbacks at that time. And they said, you're in the final 8. So started the process with the board and the search committee, and put together my deck of the vision of what as I said, I grew up going to the Quonset Hut, then I moved back and was buying things there, shopping there, eating there, and sort of and I'd spent a lot of time around public markets because I traveled a lot for work for Skechers. I was in Barcelona 2-3 weeks a year, which is the best system in the world, and I feel like any town you go to, if they have one, you go there to get a real sort of sense and flavor of what's happening in that town, and just sort of coincidentally, I'd spent a lot of time at public markets because I liked them. And so it was like the NCAAs. It was Final 8, Final 4, and it was down to myself and one other person. And, you know, I didn't have any nonprofit experience, but I had the corporate experience, and I also had the small business experience with the food truck. And in the end, I guess they liked my vision. So, yeah, that's how I got there. But it was not intentional, but, you know, things do sometimes work out. So
6 years later, here we are.
6 years later, yeah, and a new market in Dublin opening April of 2020. Got to get that plug in there. So that's exciting.
Yeah, so let's talk about
Yeah.
the expansion. So there is expansion on 2 fronts.
2 fronts.
So talk about Dublin first, since you.
I will, since that is done.
Yeah.
And happening. So a board member said I hadn't honestly been past probably Henderson Road since I'd moved back. Which, I mean, I worked at Wyandotte Lake, if you might remember that, when I was in
when
high school.
When they said Dublin, you said, which direction
Well,
do
I was
go?
like, yeah, right. I don't have a car that'll make it that far. So one of my board members said the Crawford Hoyne folks want to meet you, and every developer wants to get a grocery in their development. Every single one of them. And no one can get them. groceries and supermarkets, they're not expanding. They really are contracting. And it's nearly impossible. You need a lot of density. So, their grocery store fell through. And I said, I'll go up. And I get calls at least weekly saying, I'm in San Antonio, I'm in Akron, I want to open a market. Usually 5 minutes of a phone call, they decide they can't and don't want to.
You scare them off?
I just tell them the truth. It's without the right subsidies and the right structure, if you want to open a food hall, like Cam's opening a food hall, the Bud Dairy, that's a different model. If you want to open a public market and you want the fresh offerings and things like that, the model needs to be like us. And most people are not willing to spend that money or the time to do that, and I get it. But so I went up for a meeting with Crawford Hoyne, 30 people in the thing, and like I said, all right, I'll give you my 5 minutes and you'll change your mind. And they said, no, we want this resource and amenity for Dublin and for our community, and it's a good investment, and we're willing to try this. So 1 year later, we signed the deal, and it's a 10-year contract. We're operating. It's an operating licensing management agreement. So they're going to lose money forever on this, and that's part of the deal, and that's okay with them because they want that for their community and then that development, and that's really the only way you can pull these off.
You drive a hard bargain.
I'm a good salesman. You're going to lose money forever.
You're going to lose money forever. Let's do this.
Yes, but the market still, and that's the beauty of this is most of the proceeds go back to 59 Spruce, which is our market. So we operate on a very, when I took over the market, we were broke at a credit line. The electric bill would come and it was 15, 18 grand. Oh, geez. So we're now in the black, and this will help keep us in the black. So it really is not only great for Dublin, but it's great for the existing market in the city of Columbus as well.
So how will Dublin be the same and different from the existing location?
So the mission will be the same, incubating, supporting local independent business. The part that in our mission downtown, that won't be a sort of preservation of history, but it is preservation of history of the brand. We'll have 21 merchants. I want the mix to be very similar. I'm talking to several fresh merchants. I would say you'll see, out of 21 stalls, you'll see maybe 8 or 9 come from downtown, and then the rest will be all new merchants. And so that's, for us when going through, all right, is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? We have to stick to our mission. The IRS requires that, being a nonprofit. So it helps us expand that mission to another part of town and help out, startups and new businesses.
Did you have did anybody as part of the board bring up any concerns around this is going in a brand new development in Dublin? This really isn't. It doesn't feel like the North Market, right? It's going to be new, right? Were there some conversations like that? Because as I've talked to some people that found out that this was happening, and they were like, well, it's going to be different. It's not the same thing, right? It should be named different. It should be branded differently, et cetera. What kind of considerations did you go through thinking about in a suburb, in a brand new development for a market?
So sure, I wouldn't say I had as that much pushback internally from the board because they understand our struggles and how to be stronger, and this was a good idea on paper and to the mission. But publicly, sure. There's a weird thing here, and it's not only here, but it's this. I'm a downtown person. To hell with Dublin people, or take your pick, Hilliard or Delaware or Worthington. That's a city thing, and they can't have one. That's funny to me because everything. The reasons why we did this was to strengthen, like I said, better succeed in our mission, but there's no downside to this. It's more of an ego issue when I read and I stopped reading comments online, or I'd already quit my job or moved on. But we're not trying to go up there and recreate, this hokey old building in the bottom of a parking structure by any means. It will have its own personality in every sense. But I look at it, as I was talking about Barcelona specifically, you know, they have 35 public markets. No matter where you live in Barcelona, you're about a 15-minute walk to a market, which has kept the supermarkets out in the long haul.
That is so crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and that's how you have to do this. So, you know, in my mind, if we can expand the public market system here in Central Ohio, tell me why that's a bad idea. That's my simple answer to this. But, you know, I get it. There's this city versus suburb thing that, like, I mean, I moved from Los Angeles. Everything's a suburb, you know, and you know, it's territorial to some degree, but you know, I don't buy into that stuff.
So the downtown evolution, current location evolution, is probably even more controversial based upon when it was first, you know, announced, and that was a while ago when the RFP went out for the development to pick who was going to do the development. Take us through, you know, why do it, what's happening, when it's going to happen, right, and some of the controversy around it, because some people were very unhappy about the fact that it's going to become some tower.
Yeah. So I'd say the first couple weeks of the job, so our landlord is the City of Columbus, specifically the Department of Finance that holds our lease. We had a 20-year lease. We moved in 95. So that ran out when I was in the job in 05. Or 15, sorry. But early on, finance department, different director at the time said, you know, get over here, we want to meet the new guy. You know, we give you $1 rent, want to make sure you're, you know, have a brain and can do this and that. So I go over there and I got this long speech about, you know, don't think we've ever, the city driven by in that parking lot of yours and not said, there's other things we could do there. Okay, I agree with you. Check. Well, you know, there's no guarantees, no certainty, because things change with administrations, which, you know, we've had a long line of administrations that understand the importance of the market for the community, for tourism. I mean, we helped Don Brown at the convention center. We put asses in seats. I give tours all the time to bring big conventions and things of that nature. So, you know, all these administrations have been understood our value to the city, even though, you know, they subsidize us. But it made me think, you get an administration that doesn't get it, and that can happen, and says, well, that's Boardwalk, that's the best piece of property in town, move them over to fill in the blank. And then once again, we're up against this, you know, as we've been 2 other times in our market lives, of one burning down, not wanting to rebuild, the second one about to go away. How can I work with the city to make sure this is here long past me, long past all of us? So at the time, the director of development, Steve Shoney, had just started. I just sort of started. Actually, you know what? I was interviewed, because it was part of my vision. I was interviewed by Columbus Underground, and I said out loud, what's some of your vision? I said to do something with that parking lot, expand the market. And my board freaked. They're like, we don't own the property. You can't say things like that. I said, well, yes, I don't have a hard hat on. I just said my vision is to be more market. If I have more market, better fulfill the mission. And they said, do damage control, call the city. And they said, well, you know, if that's something you're interested in, okay. And so I had a meeting with Director Schoen, and I said, I want to make sure this thing's here for a long time. And you subsidize this. I'd like to figure out a better way for all of us in this. And we went to Coleman, actually, after he decided not to run again. They're like, let's wait it out for a new mayor. And then Ginther came on board, and here we are. So we did an RFP process, about 8 developers, all but one from Columbus, one from Indy. And there were 8 or so city departments were in that selection committee. It was the first time ever the city of Columbus invited a non-city department to be in there. So they allowed myself and my board chair to be part of this selection committee, and because they wanted us to steer this, because, like I said, this administration very much understands the importance. So we made a choice. We had a press conference April 2017, and you might have seen it. It was 35-story tower at the time, which is not an easy thing to build, and that's a tough site. So we've been working 2 years to get to something that makes sense for the market, the city, and the development team. And we're getting very close. And perpetuity was my first goal when I took this to the city, that, like I said, make sure it's there forever. Second was density. The market survives on people. If I have more people, if you all move into that building and have a kitchen up there, and we operate at a micro level. I mean, Yarmir, who you might know from Easton, he said to me, he goes, this doesn't make sense to me. You're going to go through all this disruption for, 150 apartments and X amount of commercial space and blah, blah, blah. But my example is if I have 150 people, 150 units, 1.5 people in a unit, if half of them came down about a pound of tuna from Doug, the fish guy, it'd pay his rent. So that's sort of how we operate. So even 150 kitchens up there will make a difference to a fresh merchant. And I shouldn't say it out loud, but the prepared foods merchants, I'm not worried about them. With all the convention business and all those things, they make a fine living. It's fresh and maintaining that. So this, and also having an office, 45,000 square feet, 90, a lot. All those people working there, coming and going every day. That's more business for the fresh merchants. So I think as opposed to fresh going away, we can actually maybe grow it with that many people. So density was a big part of it for me, and really, preservation. Doing something like this, the market's going to be there forever. It's not going to be torn down by an administration that doesn't get it. So there's a lot of positives, and it's a surface lot in the middle of a downtown. That's not good use. Not good use in the middle of a downtown.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Liz Lesner when she was still here, and
she's not a fan of me.
Apparently, not a lot of fandom happening in either direction, as it turns out. I think
can't win them all
with several people, not just you. But one of the things that she said to me one time that I thought was interesting was that she took a different approach. She took a micro approach to her places, right? Her because her concepts were all very sort of edgy, and she said, my places are not destination places. My places are who's within 2 miles and can walk here, right? And she said, that's who I care about, and that's who I cater to, and that's what the theme and the concept is around. She was like, everybody else in the restaurant business is thinking about who's within a 25-mile radius, right, and who can get here, and parking, et cetera. And she's like, I didn't care a lick about parking because the people I was trying to serve was that micro community within 2 miles of the place. And
actually
some truth to that probably.
Well, there 100% there is, which is surprising that she really took a stance against my vision at the market when I took over, because I don't disagree with that, but at the same time I say if you're in the food and bev business, or who doesn't want to be a destination at some point? So I don't know. Okay, I get it.
So what do you do on a daily basis besides, show up and look fabulous?
Oh, like I said, I cleaned up for this. Generally speaking, I'm not
convince
this
people
cleaned
to
up.
lose money for 10 years.
Well, the first couple of years of the job are very much different than they are now. I mean, we with the help of a great board of directors, we had to really create a new financial structure for the market. So we spent a lot of time.
I.e., you get paid more?
No, that's it. Nonprofit world is not like that. No. So
board, I need to create a new financial structure for us to operate on, i.e., I make more money.
Well, it doesn't work that way. It goes back into reinvesting into the nonprofit usually. That's how it should be. So the first couple of years were really just trying two things. It was the mix in the market of the merchants. We'd had a lot of we went through a giant remodel when I first started when the city, we redid the HVAC system. We had to move a lot of people around and all this bit, and it was an opportunity to sort of say, okay, now's the time to refresh your business or not. And people had the options, and some chose to, walk away and retire. I mean, I believe, so right off the bat for me was trying to get in the black and the merchant mix. And that was really the first, that never ends, of course, but what I focused on, because if the market doesn't have the things that you want and give you a reason to go, then there's no reason for us to be there. So that's what you all go there for, are the merchants. So spent a lot of time sort of figuring out what we needed and who should be coming in. And then, I mean, the last couple of years, it's been a lot of development stuff. It's been the Dublin thing and the expansion, both downtown. I mean, fundraising never ends for us. We have the gala, which is in May. We have the Wine Fest, which is this weekend, Friday and Saturday. Biggest Ohio wine fest in Ohio now, I think, about 20 Ohio wineries. We do a mix and shake, which is something new in the last couple of years. It's all Ohio spirits, and obviously we try to stick to the all Ohio, Ohio-centric stuff. And then we have night markets about, so I mean, as soon as we finish one event, we're doing the next one. So that's a lot of it also, not myself and my staff. They do certainly more of the heavy lifting on that. So always that. I'm chasing panhandlers around all day. I mean, it's no one, when I interviewed, they certainly, I will be able to write the job description for the next person better than they wrote it for me, of what you really need to be doing all day and every day.
Sounds very glamorous.
You know what? It's just a lot of getting your hands dirty, which, you know, it certainly is never boring.
So how big is the staff? And to give the people a sense of what does it take for this thing to happen every day?
I have a director of operations, director of communications, and a senior office manager. That's all full-time. And then a handful of part-timers and an intern now and again. I mean, it's tough. I mean, I worked for a company, a $3 billion company that, you know, you just can't get caught up. You don't have, the money. I mean, every dollar at Skechers was like 1,000, maybe more, 10,000 to us. So I certainly, it's been the most, it's much more challenging when I first started, I walked into my office and there was a printer there. It was like dot matrix, I mean, it was 20 years old. And I said, director of operations, I'm like, can I get a new printer? And he goes, you're working for a nonprofit now. I'm like, so I brought my printer from home. So it's things like that. You have to get super creative with every dollar. And that's been hard, but a lot of fun.
I was going to say, it seems like, given the challenges with the nonprofit structure and the margins being thin, right, and it being still a financial challenge, given the aspect of the dynamics of running a public market, you seem to enjoy it. So I don't think you'd be doing it for 6 years at this point, right? If not enjoying it.
No, I care a great deal. It's an honor. I'm amazed that I got the job. I certainly was the unorthodox decision for the job, I think, but I think it worked out for all of us. Yeah, it's an honor, and there's everybody has an opinion about the market, good, bad, or whatever the case. I mean, it means a lot to the city. It means a lot to people, which is part of the expansion in the parking lot is controversial. People, for the most part, are concerned about the future of the market, and I appreciate that. Now, people can be unreasonable or unreasonably nostalgic sometimes, but I mean, the market is an evolving thing. It's continued to evolve. We're in our third location over 143 years. If we wouldn't have evolved to the Quonset hut to this, it'd be gone like the rest of the ones in America. So I think that's a hard thing for people to understand. People still say, oh, I loved the Quonset hut. I mean, it was a shithole. If anybody, it was horrible. There's no doors in the bathroom. The windows were falling out. There was no heat or AC. It was miserable for the merchants. It was miserable for whoever shopped there. But people still say, oh, it's not been the same since the Quonset hut. That's right. We have heat. So, but we all get stuck in nostalgia once in a while. So, yeah, it's a great honor. It's a lot of, like I said, it during times when we're doing big things, which, we have some things coming up here shortly you'll hear about. Those are hard times because criticism is, I care a great deal about the market, and it's tough to see people in the press thinking that I don't. So it does get personal, which I've gotten better. When you work in the fashion industry, you put out a season's worth of bad stuff and no one buys it. no one came after me personally. You know, it's pretty anonymous. This is a little different, but.
How does the North Market compare now and sort of stack up to other markets across the country? And after the expansion and evolution, is it going to change its place in the rankings? Do you even care about any of that?
Of course I do.
Okay.
Of course I want to have the best market in America, public market. I mean, certainly I can't compete with a Pike's Place because they have hundreds of acres and it's a whole different sort of, you know, I have, you know, 1 and change acres right there. You know, when you sort of apples to apples, I think we're doing, and I'm not going to sit and brag and boast, but I think we're doing
You can brag,
I think,
it's
well,
okay.
I mean, we do our merchants keep breaking records every year. They do 16 million, and I love to share information with other public markets. Sadly, not all of them do the same. I think we're all kind of in this. Most of us are nonprofits. I can look up your 990. There's no secrets, you know. I think our merchants, which is most important, are doing very well. $16 million in volume on the floor last year. And that, you know, 15 years ago was maybe 9 million. So that means more people are coming. They're doing a better business. That's great. You know, we are in the black. And like I said, you can, not being disparaging, but you can look up other markets. One in Cincinnati, they've never made a dollar. You know, and good, they use subsidies and it's fundraising. But so being in the black at public market is a pretty big deal. So I think we're doing well, and I travel to a lot. I mean, I've seen most of the ones still existing in the U.S., and I think, and a lot in Europe. I think we're doing well with our mix. And like I said, it's difficult times in sort of our space because Market District wants to be us. You know, they have prepared food, they have fresh foods, they have a bar, all those things. The project will be one of the biggest private public partnerships with the public market in the world. Hardly any, I'll go back to the Dublin thing. No one has expanded a public market system in the US in decades. I mean, maybe, I was trying to find out, Canada, Toronto, doing a little bit, but in the US you can't find one public market system that has expanded in 40 years. So that's a big deal. And the development in front of us, having a mixed-use project, and by the way, we're going to have an atrium for public use. We're going to have an expansion, probably another 8,000 feet for more merchants. So with more merchants, we have more public space. There's all sorts of great things that go on with this project other than just a building in front of us. I mean, it is really all about us. And you know, it's going to be good for the city as a whole, but we wouldn't have done this if it wasn't good for us. But it will be pretty groundbreaking in the world, honestly, and we're almost there. So,
yeah, spectacular. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah, 6 years of hard-fought work to get to this point, to then do something that hasn't been done for a really long time. And I think people now value the public market participation in the community. Because even when you see the convention people, when I'm at the North Market, and there are cheer competitions happening, right? And the kids are there, and the parents
and
are there.
volleyball and fencing last week. I mean, it's the convention center. Don Brown does an amazing job, especially since the renovation. It's a lot of dollars being brought into our city, and it's good for all of us in one way or another.
Yeah, and I did make the mistake of on Pride Saturday, of going to the parade and then going, okay, well, I'm hungry. I'm going to walk over to the North Market.
There was a convention going. There was a lot going on.
Going to Hot Chicken
weekend.
Takeover, and I almost died by the time I got to the register.
Yeah, it's busy.
Yeah, it's busy. But, you know, I hung in there. I showed a little bit of perseverance, right? And as many people were turning around because the line was so long. But it's also, I think, demonstrates the fact that what a location. I mean,
Yeah.
When anything's happening downtown, you guys are just off the hook. And
We-
it's
and
awesome for the merchants.
It is, and I think that we have the opportunity with the new project in front of us is that right now we're just, you know, we're 9 to 7 most days of the week. There's an opportunity in the future that we can be activated a lot longer for you to come by. I mean, I'd like to be open later. That's why we're doing the night market, sort of train folks. We stay open till 9, merchants open. So, you know, I believe we can be a destination in the evening that's more for the community to come by and shop and play and, you know, nice family sort of get together, fun things. So that's another activating that neighborhood, because it's, for a lot of years it was just some bars on Park Street. And so now we have a new hotel going across the street from us, the AC Marriott, where all the bars were. Got a brand new Hilton about to happen. So I think, our neighborhood is sort of the donut hole to downtown. The short north ends, there's us, and then you hit downtown. So I think it's important that we are that stretch, not just us. I mean, the folks in front of us on High Street, that's the connection to downtown, and I think we're doing a better job, and everybody around us is sort of getting folks there.
I think I know the answer to this question. Do you think you've done a good job over the last 6 years leading the market? Well, and where would you be critical of your own sort of performance as the director of it?
The hard questions. Yeah, there are things I'm very proud of. Whether a good job or not, we were in a sticky situation, and wasn't just me. That was a good team and board members, smart board members that I needed at the time. Because that's also, I report to a board of directors. And if you have ones that are active, engaged, it's a big difference from having a bunch of people just rubber stamping stuff. So I think that the timing was right with my board, and when I started, that I'm proud of a lot of things we've done. And, like I said, some folks, they may not like the expansion idea or the Dublin thing, but it's only to build the strength of the market. And we're in the strongest position we've been in many, many decades. So I'll take that.
So the vision that you created in this pitch deck when you were, when you almost got ghosted about, the job, how close are you to what your vision was back then when you were considering actually taking this gig on?
I would say that, and now I look back and I still have that deck, and I mean, if mine was the best out of the bunch, I think it was good, but it was, everything. We've gotten to everything. To me, it's the one thing that is never finished is the merchant part. Who's coming and who's going, and that's hard. I've had to make some difficult decisions. Some people have made them for me, and that's the one ongoing part, because that's, like I said, that's why you go there. And so that's, to me, that's never perfect. That's something you always have to be looking for, new best-in-class business coming in, or make sure you help out that person that's sort of faltering, because we get sales numbers, so I know what's going on there. So, so that never ends.
Do you participate in would you ever participate in the financial success of a merchant, or is it a straight tenant-landlord relationship right now, and would you ever be willing to change to a different financial model?
Let's just say that we are there, we're there for everyone, but for our fresh merchants. And that would be produce, flowers, all of those businesses we would, if it came to it, we would subsidize. And basically the way, let me go back a little. So when I started, everybody had different rent. It's like all of you. You all had the same size apartment in a building. You showed up in '95, you showed up in 2005, and you just paid based on when you came. We went to a published rate based on what you do. So that changed everything in that, we were able to bring a lot of people's rent down, the fresh ones, and then help subsidize it. So that was the first step to help subsidizing fresh to keep them alive. Now, if it ever came to a point where we had to do more, and we had money in the bank, which we have a little now, for the fresh merchants, we would definitely consider whatever it takes to keep them. I'm not if you're just a bad business person sleeping on the job, but we certainly, the fresh merchants are top of list to make sure that they survive.
Cool. Alex has a microphone from our team. If you have a question, raise your hand. She'll get you a mic. If you're game for taking a couple of questions.
Love it. I don't like talking at people.
Follow up on that question about we're here at Rev One, and they have certain services that they offer to help entrepreneurs succeed. So could you talk a little bit more about how you do help like somebody new, and besides just signing the lease?
Yes, totally get it. I think that that's something we've put a lot more thought into and gotten better at. I try to set up the board of directors with people of disciplines that make sense at the market. So I have finance folks, I have attorneys, of course, but so when we're thinking about board members there, it's bringing talents that potentially help us in situations like that. So if you come in, if you have a pop-up, and I don't know, pick a food or whatever the case, and it's something that you really want to pursue, we'll help you write that business plan or put you in touch with the right folks. You need a rendering, we find somebody to help you with that. So I don't expect you to walk in with the prettiest business plan ever made. We walk people, the ones we believe in and believe have a potential, we will help them work through that. After that, construction-wise, we will put them in touch. We have a couple good contractors that do smaller stuff that are fair. We'll help you with that. Marketing, we will help ourselves or put you in touch with people. And mostly this is volunteer stuff, not construction-wise. But so I'm always in my team connecting. Where are you sort of lacking, and how can we help you get there? And that's ongoing. I mean, even if you've been a merchant, I just had a meeting with a merchant that's been there. It's an original Quonset hut merchant, and needs to refresh the business in a number of ways. Look, menu, quality. There's some struggles. We had a meeting last week. All right, how can we help? Let's get you some inspiration. Let's put you together with the right people. One of my mentors, and has been great to me, is Rodney Wasserstrom, the Wasserstrom family, one of the largest kitchen equipment in the world. Rodney's a big fan of the market, has supported it for many, many years. Rodney will, and Wasserstrom will meet or beat any price for any equipment bought in the market. So we do our best to connect with the folks and the disciplines that they need ongoing.
Thanks for being here. You touched on this briefly with the atrium comment, but wondering if there's anything you can share as far as what's coming in addition to the residential units and the office space. I'm thinking Cross Street Market in Baltimore just did a big renovation. Is it something like that, like a facelift, or what can we be excited about? And then if you could talk a little bit maybe about the relationships between the merchants themselves. So you have kind of your anchor tenants, Jenny's Hot Chicken, the importance of the fresh folks, and then the new ones like the ramen.
So I'd say Thursday you're going to see all of this, what it's going to look like and all what it's going to be. That's when we're officially going to release this, I'm told, as of the conference call I was on when I was driving over here. Merchant expansion, 150 units. Ground floor will be somewhat seamless to... there's not much I can say on that one. I knew that was going to come up today, and I'm so close. It's a big project, probably the biggest. It'll still be the biggest building built in Columbus since the late '80s. I mean, I'll tell you this: it's not going to be 35 that we announced, not the half cut, but it's going to be a big project. Yeah, the atrium, most of all this is going to happen on Spruce Street, obviously. Vine's a kind of a tough street. You got the county parking garage, not super sexy over on that side. That's loading docks and things of that nature. That stays. Spruce becomes really the feature street. And there's the plaza that we're going to put there, serious facelift. Some things we're doing right now. ASAE is a big convention for convention people that's going to be here in August. We're doing a little facelift inside the second floor mezzanine, the seating area. All new seating. We're going to paint, complete, which it needs it. I mean, all that furniture has been donated, and the round before that was donated, and chairs are breaking. So we're going to do some things inside right now, and then there'll be more of that with the project down the line for our existing building. So, I mean, not much is going to change in our building, but we need a serious cleanup. And that's starting right now. So that's kind of all I can say about that. Merchant question. They're a competitive bunch. When I started, I felt like it was cartels, different cartels that stuck together, and it was a problem. Some of those cartels were a cancer, and I mean, being a merchant at the market is a privilege, not a right. Most of them do very, very well, and that's some of them, that's their only business, and that's what I want. So I've split the cartels pretty early on, and so that relationships, I believe, have improved, but they're a competitive bunch. There's a fair amount of collaboration. We obviously encourage a lot of collaboration, and you get that. I mean, Spice Guy certainly works with a lot of the other merchants with some of the, blends and so forth there. So I would say overall, it's considering that they're all entrepreneurs and very competitive, it's pretty good amongst themselves. So I mean, any given day you have 300 people working downstairs, and most of them still are owner operator. I mean, Jenny's not there scooping ice cream every day. Joe's not brining chicken there every day. But I mean, I see Jenny and Charlie often having lunch. I see Joe a fair amount. So you still have a lot of owner operators, which is the most successful businesses in that place. That's what it takes. I mean, because you want to see the person. I mean, it's like Doug the fish guy. They want Doug to cut the fish for them. So those types of businesses, certainly, you can tell from the volume they do. So it's competitive, but I think they're pretty reasonable with each other most of the time. I try. What was your other question? I forget. Okay. Like I said, I wish I could talk more about design. It's exciting, trust me. So, and yes, there'll be parking. No one answered me that. No one asked that question. It's usually the first hand. Smart group.
Is the market going to be able to remain open during
100%?
Okay.
The headline that has been the majority of the last 6 months of working with the city and the developers is the construction mitigation plan, because I'm not worried at all in 24, 30 months when it's finished that the merchants, everybody going, oh my God, this is absolutely a game changer for the market and the city. It's the slippery roads of the 24 to 30 months of getting through that. So we've spent a ton of time on the mitigation, and all right, we're trying to answer every question before it's asked. Where am I going to park? So that's been a huge piece of the last 6 months for my board and I and those groups. So yeah, we don't close. We don't close, and we can't close. We just have to communicate to you how to get there and park there, and that's a big part of the messaging that we're working on here that you'll hear shortly. So yeah, no, we can't shut down.
Well, thank you for coming and doing this, my friend. You're super cool. You've done a great job with the market, I think, as everybody would attest to. Yeah, onward and upward.
Yes. My
Please help me
pleasure.
thank Rick for joining us.
Thank you.